Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Manhattan, Grand Ballroom of the Plaza Hotel. A March evening. The champagne flute in Olivia's hand cost more than her monthly rent. As a junior curator at the Met, she knew this because she discreetly Googled the price while pretending to admire the Picasso on the wall. Olivia, darling. The shrill voice of Evelyn Harrington cut through the elegant murmur of Manhattan's elite. I simply must introduce you to my nephew. He's absolutely perfect for you. Olivia nearly choked on her Dom Perignon. Evelyn's matchmaking attempts were legendary on the Upper East Side, and legendarily disastrous. Evelyn, I can't... Olivia desperately searched for an escape. Any escape. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. I'm married. The entire ballroom seemed to fall silent at that exact moment, as if the universe wanted to amplify her lie to every socialite, CEO, and trust fund baby in attendance. Married? Evelyn's Botoxed eyebrows attempted to furrow. Since when? Since recently. Olivia felt heat creep up her neck. It was very private. You know how it is. And where is your husband tonight? Olivia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her mind went completely blank, like a canvas before the first brush stroke. That's when a deep, velvety voice spoke from behind her. Right here, sweetheart. Olivia turned slowly, as if moving through honey, and then she saw him. Broad shoulders in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, dark hair styled with just enough dishevelment to look effortless, eyes the color of deep forest green that seemed capable of seeing straight through to her soul, and a smile. Goodness, that smile was dangerous. The kind that made married women forget they were married. He approached with the confidence of a man who owned half of Manhattan, slipped his arm around Olivia's waist, and pulled her against his chest. His cologne was expensive and masculine, something between cedar and spice that made her want to bury her face in his neck. Sorry I'm late, darling. He emphasized the endearment in a way that made Olivia's stomach flip. Last-minute call with the Tokyo investors. Olivia was frozen. Who in the world was this man? And why was he saving her reputation? She stammered. You must be wondering who I am. He extended his hand to Evelyn, whose jaw had practically hit the marble floor. Nicholas Grant. Pleasure to meet you. Evelyn nearly dropped her champagne flute. The Nicholas Grant? Her voice came out as a reverent whisper. Of Grant Holdings? The real estate mogul who owns half of Manhattan, among other things? Nicholas shrugged with false modesty. Olivia felt her knees wobble. Holy moly. She had just fake married the most powerful man in New York City, possibly the entire East Coast. How wonderful. Evelyn clapped her hands like a child. And when was the wedding? Olivia opened her mouth to confess everything. But Nicholas was faster. 3 weeks ago in Tuscany, he looked at Olivia with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. We couldn't resist the sunset over the vineyards, could we, wife? The way he said wife should have been illegal. It was too intimate, too possessive, too real. Yes, Olivia nodded, still in shock. Tuscany was unforgettable, but why did you hide it from everyone? Evelyn was clearly offended at missing the social event of the century. Olivia wanted something intimate. Nicholas caressed her cheek with the back of his hand, a gesture so natural that for a split second she believed they really were married. She's private about media attention. I respect that. Evelyn sighed dramatically. How romantic. You two are absolutely perfect together. Actually, Nicholas, she continued, I must introduce you to the museum board president. He was just looking for investors for the new contemporary wing. Of course, Nicholas smiled. But Olivia noticed the smile didn't reach his eyes. But first, I need to speak with my wife privately. Urgent business matter. Before Olivia could protest, he guided her through the crowd of designer gowns and diamond jewelry toward a private terrace overlooking Central Park. The spring breeze carried the scent of blooming trees and the distant hum of the city that never slept. Nicholas released her waist and stepped back, leaning against the stone balustrade. Under the moonlight, he looked even more imposing and dangerous. So, he studied her with those forest green eyes. Want to explain why I just married a complete stranger? Olivia swallowed hard. The gala continued behind the glass doors, but out here on the terrace, it was just her and the most powerful man in New York, and she had just dragged him into the biggest lie of her life. I can explain everything. She twisted her hands nervously. But first, why did you help me? Nicholas tilted his head, studying her like she was a rare piece of art. Maybe because you looked like a deer caught in headlights. Or maybe because lying to Evelyn Harrington is practically a public service. Olivia couldn't help but laugh. She really is terrible at matchmaking, isn't she? Terrible doesn't begin to cover it. Nicholas chuckled. and the sound was rich and genuine. She's tried to set me up with 3 of her nieces, 2 of her book club friends, and a distant cousin who lives in Connecticut. And now you're stuck in a fake marriage with me. Olivia winced. Sorry. I'll fix this. I'll make up a quick divorce or an annulment or... Hold on. Nicholas raised a hand. Who said I wanted a divorce? Olivia blinked. What do you mean? Nicholas stepped closer, like a predator approaching its prey. But there was something playful in his eyes that made Olivia's heart race for all the right reasons. Do you have any idea how many women try to trap me into marriage every day? He stopped right in front of her, and here you are, desperate to get out of a marriage with me. It's refreshing. I'm not trying to get out of... Well, I am. But not because you're not... Olivia gestured vaguely at him. You know, tell me. Attractive. The word came out as a whisper. You're incredibly attractive. Dangerously attractive. That's the problem. Nicholas's smile was slow and devastating. Dangerously attractive. You're the kind of man women make foolish decisions over. Olivia crossed her arms defensively. And I can't afford to make foolish decisions. My life is complicated enough. What kind of complications? Olivia hesitated. She wasn't used to talking about her personal life, especially not with strangers, even devastatingly handsome strangers who had just saved her from social humiliation. The usual complications of a 30-year-old single woman in Manhattan: work too much, sleep too little, family thinks I'll end up alone with 20 cats. And that's why you invented a husband. That's why I invented a husband. Olivia sighed. Who turned out to be you, apparently. Nicholas was quiet for a moment, his green eyes studying her face in the moonlight. What's your last name, Olivia? Harper. Olivia Harper. Well, Olivia Harper. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. I have a proposition for you. Olivia's breath caught. What kind of proposition? Keep the marriage. Are you out of your mind? Hear me out. Nicholas's voice was calm, reasonable. I need a wife to get the board of directors off my back about settling down. You need a husband to get Evelyn Harrington and her matchmaking army off yours. It's a perfect business arrangement. Olivia stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You want to fake marry me for real? I want to fake marry you convincingly. His smile was pure charm and danger. 6 months. We play the happy couple at events like this. You get access to the art world connections you need for your career. I get boardroom credibility. And at the end, we have an amicable divorce. This is insane. This is practical. Olivia looked out over Central Park, her mind racing. 6 months married to the most eligible bachelor in New York. The man was clearly out of his mind, but also intriguing. What's the catch? She asked finally. No catch. Just rules. Nicholas counted on his fingers. 1. We maintain the charade in public. 2. We keep our personal lives separate. 3. No real feelings involved. Olivia studied his face, looking for any sign he was joking. You're serious. Dead serious. And what happens if one of us breaks the rules? Nicholas's smile turned predatory. Then we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Olivia knew she should say no, should walk away from this gorgeous, dangerous man and his crazy proposition, should go back to her safe, quiet life of art and solitude. Instead, she heard herself asking, when do we start? Nicholas's penthouse office, Grant Tower. The next morning, Olivia stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of Nicholas Grant's penthouse office, watching the city sprawl endlessly below. She'd been in plenty of impressive spaces. The Met had its share of grandeur, but this was something else entirely. The office screamed power and success. From the sleek modern furniture to the original Rothko, hanging casually on the wall like it was a random poster. Having second thoughts? Nicholas's voice came from behind his mahogany desk, where he was reviewing what looked suspiciously like a legal document. Third and fourth thoughts. Actually, Olivia turned to face him, noting how different he looked in his charcoal business suit compared to last night's tuxedo. Still devastatingly handsome, but somehow more approachable. Did you seriously have your lawyers draft a marriage contract overnight? I don't do anything halfway, Olivia. He looked up from the papers, those forest green eyes studying her with an intensity that made her feel like a specimen under a microscope. And I protect my investments. Is that what I am? An investment? Nicholas's lips quirked up in what might have been a smile. You're a business partner. There's a difference. Olivia walked over to the desk and picked up the contract. It was thick, intimidatingly thick. This thing is longer than most actual prenups. Because it's more complex than most actual marriages. Nicholas leaned back in his leather chair, looking completely at ease while Olivia felt like she was about to jump out of her skin. Page 3 covers public appearances. Page 7 details financial arrangements. Page 12 outlines. Page 12? Olivia flipped through the document, her head spinning. What could possibly require 12 pages of explanation? The termination clause. Something in his tone made Olivia look up sharply. Meaning? Meaning we need to be very clear about what happens when this ends. Nicholas stood and walked around the desk, stopping close enough that she could smell that same cedar and spice cologne from last night. 6 months. Olivia. Not a day longer. When it's over completely. No messy emotional entanglements. No lingering attachments. Clean break. Olivia tried to ignore the way her pulse quickened when he said her name. You seem awfully concerned about emotional entanglements for someone who just met me 12 hours ago. I've seen what happens when business gets personal. His expression darkened for just a moment, and Olivia caught a glimpse of something deeper behind those green eyes, pain or regret. It never ends well. Speaking from experience? Speaking from observation. Nicholas moved back behind his desk. The moment of vulnerability, if that's what it was gone so quickly, Olivia almost thought she'd imagined it. Page 15 covers living arrangements. You'll move into my penthouse. Separate bedrooms, obviously. But we need to sell the newlywed image. Olivia's eyebrows shot up. I'm sorry, what? You want me to move in with you? It's a practical necessity. The media will be watching us closely, especially after Evelyn Harrington's announcement last night. What announcement? Nicholas pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. Olivia's stomach dropped as she read the headline on page 6. Mystery Woman. Snags Manhattan's most eligible bachelor in secret Italian wedding. Oh no. Olivia sank into the chair across from his desk. This is really happening, isn't it? The article quoted Evelyn as saying, "We're absolutely perfect together and clearly madly in love." Nicholas's tone was dry as dust. It also mentions that you work at the Met and that I've been secretly smitten for months. Secretly smitten? Despite everything, Olivia couldn't help but laugh. Evelyn has quite an imagination, which is exactly why we need to be convincing. Nicholas sat down and slid the contract across the desk toward her. The story is already out there. We can either control the narrative or let it control us. Olivia stared at the contract like it might bite her. This is crazy. People don't actually do things like this in real life. People like us do. People like you. I'm just a museum curator who made a stupid mistake at a party. You're a brilliant museum curator who graduated summa cum laude from Harvard with a double major in art history and business. Nicholas's voice was matter-of-fact, but Olivia felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. You speak 3 languages. You've published papers on Renaissance art authentication, and you've increased visitor engagement at the Met by 30% in just 2 years. Olivia blinked. How do you know all that? I had my people do a background check. You had your people. Olivia stood up so fast, her chair rolled backward. You investigated me? Standard procedure for any business partnership. Nicholas remained infuriatingly calm. I don't enter into agreements with people I don't know. We're talking about a fake marriage, not a corporate merger. In my world, there's not much difference. Olivia stared at him, trying to figure out if he was serious. The scary thing was, she was pretty sure he was. What else did your people find out about me? You have a younger brother named Ethan who's a software engineer in Seattle. Your parents live in a small town in Connecticut where your father runs a hardware store and your mother teaches elementary school. You send them money every month, even though you can barely afford your studio apartment. You volunteer at a literacy program on weekends, and you haven't had a serious relationship in 2 years. Olivia felt heat creep up her neck. Having her entire life laid out like a case file was mortifying. Anything else? You have excellent credit, no criminal record. And you once got a speeding ticket in upstate New York that you forgot to pay. I was rushing to get to my grandmother's funeral, Olivia said defensively. I know. I had it taken care of. Olivia's mouth fell open. You paid my speeding ticket? Consider it a signing bonus. Nicholas's smile was infuriatingly charming. So, what do you say? Are you in? Olivia looked down at the contract again. 24 hours ago, her biggest worry was whether she could afford to get her air conditioner fixed before summer. Now she was contemplating fake marrying a billionaire who apparently had the resources to investigate her entire life history and pay off her traffic violations without breaking a sweat. What about my job at the Met? You'll keep it. In fact, this arrangement might help your career. Grant Holdings has significant investments in the arts. I sit on several museum boards. You're offering to help my career in exchange for 6 months of pretending to be married to you. I'm offering a mutually beneficial business arrangement where we both get what we need. Olivia was quiet for a long moment, weighing her options. On one hand, this was the most insane thing anyone had ever asked her to do. On the other hand, 6 months of this life, even if it was fake, could open doors she'd never dreamed of. What about dating other people? She asked finally. Absolutely not. We're newlyweds, Olivia. Madly in love. Remember? So I'm supposed to be celibate for 6 months? Something flickered in Nicholas's eyes so quickly she almost missed it. Are you seeing someone now? No, but then it shouldn't be a problem. Olivia narrowed her eyes. What about you? Are you giving up your entire social life for this charade? My social life is primarily business-related anyway. That's not what I meant. And you know it. Nicholas leaned forward, his green eyes intense. Let me be very clear about something, Olivia. For the next 6 months, you are the only woman in my life. Period. This only works if we're completely committed to the role. The way he said it low and serious and somehow possessive made Olivia's breath catch. She tried to tell herself it was just business, just part of the act. But her traitorous heart skipped a beat anyway. Fine, she heard herself saying, but I have conditions of my own. I'm listening. First, I want my own credit card with my name on it. I'm not going to be dependent on you for every little expense. Done. Second, I want to keep my apartment. Even if I'm staying at your penthouse, I want to know I have somewhere to go if this all falls apart. Nicholas nodded. Reasonable. Anything else? Olivia took a deep breath. Third, I want to know what really happened that made you so worried about emotional entanglements. For a moment, Nicholas's carefully controlled expression slipped, and Olivia saw something raw and vulnerable in his eyes. Then the mask was back in place. That's not part of this arrangement. It is if you want me to sign that contract. They stared at each other across the mahogany desk, neither backing down. Olivia could practically feel the electricity crackling between them, a tension that had nothing to do with business negotiations and everything to do with the inexplicable pull she'd felt toward this man from the moment he'd appeared at her side last night. Finally, Nicholas spoke. Her name was Catherine. We were engaged 3 years ago. She decided she preferred my business partner to me along with half of my assets. The words were delivered in a flat, emotionless tone, but Olivia could hear the hurt underneath. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me a valuable lesson about mixing business with pleasure. Nicholas picked up an expensive pen and held it out to her. So do we have a deal? Olivia looked at the pen, then at the contract, then at the man who was proposing to turn her quiet, ordinary life completely upside down. 6 months. What was the worst that could happen? She took the pen and signed her name with a flourish. We have a deal, Mr. Grant. Nicholas's smile was slow and devastating. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Grant. The way he said Mrs. Grant sent shivers down Olivia's spine. She had a feeling she'd just signed up for a lot more than she'd bargained for. But as Nicholas came around the desk and shook her hand, his grip warm and firm and lingering, just a moment too long, Olivia couldn't bring herself to regret it. 6 months. How hard could it be? Grant Penthouse, Upper East Side. 5 days later, Olivia stood in the marble foyer of Nicholas's penthouse with 2 suitcases and a houseplant, feeling like Alice who'd tumbled down the rabbit hole into a world of obscene wealth. The space was easily 4 times the size of her entire apartment, with soaring ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, and art that probably cost more than most people's houses. This is temporary, she muttered to herself, clutching her small cactus like a security blanket. 6 months. You can survive anything for 6 months. Talking to yourself already? Nicholas's amused voice echoed through the foyer. We haven't even made it through the first week. Olivia turned to find him descending a curved staircase that belonged in a European palace, not a Manhattan apartment. He was wearing dark jeans and a navy sweater that hugged his broad shoulders in a way that should have been illegal. Casual looked good on him. Too good. I was giving myself a pep talk, Olivia said, trying to ignore the way her pulse kicked up at the sight of him. This place is a little intimidating. It's just an apartment. Nicholas, my entire studio could fit in your foyer. It's not that big. He reached for her suitcases, his fingers brushing hers in the process. The brief contact sent electricity shooting up her arm. Come on, I'll show you to your room. As they climbed the stairs, Olivia tried not to stare at the casual display of wealth around her. Original paintings lined the walls. She was pretty sure she spotted a Monet and possibly a Degas. The banister was actual marble, polished to a mirror shine. How many bedrooms does this place have? She asked. 6. Plus offices, a library, a home theater, and a rooftop garden. Of course it does. Olivia shook her head. Do you actually use all of this space? I work from home a lot, and I entertain for business. Nicholas paused at the top of the stairs, those green eyes studying her face. Having second thoughts? More like fifth and sixth thoughts. Olivia clutched her cactus tighter. This whole thing feels like playing house in a museum. It's not playing house. It's a business arrangement, remember? Right. Business. Olivia tried to ignore the slight sting of his words. Of course, it was just business to him. She was the one having trouble keeping that straight. Nicholas led her down a hallway lined with more art than most galleries, stopping at a door near the end. "This is yours." Olivia stepped inside and nearly dropped her plant. The guest room was gorgeous, all soft whites and pale blues, with a king-sized bed that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking Central Park. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "The closet is through there." Nicholas nodded toward a door on the far wall. "I had some things sent over for you." "What kind of things?" Nicholas's smile was almost sheepish. "Clothes for public appearances. Your current wardrobe is nice, but we need to maintain a certain image." Olivia set down her cactus and crossed her arms. "You bought me clothes. I had my stylist buy you clothes. There's a difference." "Not to me, there isn't." Olivia felt heat creep up her neck. "I can dress myself, Nicholas. For museum events and gallery openings, absolutely. For charity galas and board dinners with Manhattan's elite," he shrugged. "Trust me, this is necessary." Olivia wanted to argue, but she also remembered how out of place she'd felt at the Plaza Gala in her one good dress. Maybe he had a point. "Fine, but next time ask first." "Noted." Nicholas moved toward the door, then paused. "Dinner's at 7. My housekeeper, Mrs. Liu, is an excellent cook." "You have a housekeeper?" "I have a full staff. You'll meet them gradually." Nicholas's expression grew serious. "Olivia, I know this is a big adjustment, but we need to make this look natural, which means you need to be comfortable here. This is your home for the next 6 months." The word home hit Olivia harder than she expected. This penthouse was beautiful and luxurious, but it didn't feel like home. It felt like an expensive hotel where she was a long-term guest. "I'll try," she said finally. After Nicholas left, Olivia explored her new room more thoroughly. The closet was indeed stocked with clothes, designer dresses, tailored blazers, shoes that probably cost more than her monthly salary. Everything was in her exact size, which was somehow both impressive and slightly creepy. She unpacked her few belongings, feeling ridiculous putting her discount store pajamas next to silk nightgowns that still had tags from Bergdorf Goodman. Her books looked completely out of place on the elegant built-in shelves, and her cactus seemed lonely on the massive mahogany dresser. At 7 sharp, Olivia made her way downstairs to find Nicholas in what appeared to be a formal dining room. The table could easily seat 12, but it had been set for 2 at one end with actual silver and crystal glasses. "This is a lot of formality for a Tuesday night," Olivia said, sliding into the chair Nicholas held out for her. "Mrs. Liu likes to show off for new residents." Nicholas took his seat across from her. "She's been with my family for 20 years. She practically raised me after my parents died." Olivia looked up sharply. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. Car accident." "When I was 16, Nicholas's voice was matter-of-fact, but Olivia could hear the old pain underneath. "Mrs. Liu kept me from burning the house down while I figured out how to run the company." 16. Olivia's heart clenched. "You took over Grant Holdings when you were 16. Technically, the board ran things until I turned 21. But I was involved in every decision." Nicholas poured wine from a bottle that probably cost more than Olivia's rent. It was either sink or swim. Before Olivia could respond, a small Asian woman bustled into the dining room carrying covered dishes. She was probably in her 60s, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled. "Mrs. Liu, this is Olivia," Nicholas said, standing up. "Olivia, meet the woman who actually runs this household." Mrs. Liu set down the dishes and gave Olivia a thorough once-over that somehow managed to be both maternal and assessing. "So, you're the one who finally caught our Nicholas." "It's nice to meet you," Olivia said, unsure how to respond to the caught comment. "You're prettier than the pictures in the paper, and you have kind eyes." "Good. Nicholas needs someone with kind eyes." "Mrs. Liu." Nicholas's voice carried a warning. "What?" "I'm just saying she's better than that horrible Catherine woman." Mrs. Liu began uncovering dishes, revealing what looked like a gourmet feast. That one had shark eyes, cold and calculating. Olivia tried not to laugh at Nicholas's mortified expression. "The food smells incredible, Mrs. Liu." "You're too skinny. I'll fix that." Mrs. Liu patted Olivia's shoulder. "Nicholas, you make sure she eats. She's all bones." After Mrs. Liu left, Olivia and Nicholas ate in relative silence. The food was indeed incredible, some kind of braised lamb with vegetables that melted in her mouth. but Olivia found herself stealing glances at Nicholas, thinking about what Mrs. Liu had said. "She really did help raise you?" Olivia asked finally. Nicholas nodded. "My parents traveled a lot for business even before they died. Mrs. Liu was more of a constant in my life than they were. That must have been lonely. It was practical. Emotion don't run companies." Olivia set down her fork. "Is that really what you believe? That emotions are just inconvenient?" Nicholas met her gaze, his green eyes unreadable. "I believe that emotions cloud judgment. They make people vulnerable. They lead to mistakes. They also lead to joy and love and all the things that make life worth living. Do they?" Nicholas's voice was quiet. "Because from where I sit, emotions mostly lead to disappointment." Olivia felt something twist in her chest at the sadness in his voice. This man who seemed to have everything was one of the loneliest people she'd ever met. "Not always," she said softly. They finished dinner without talking about anything deeper than the weather, but Olivia could feel something shifting between them. Some wall that Nicholas had built around himself was showing tiny cracks, and she found herself wanting to understand the man behind the business facade. Later, as she got ready for bed in her ridiculously luxurious room, Olivia caught herself thinking about Nicholas eating alone in that enormous dining room for years. No wonder he approached everything like a business transaction. It was probably the only kind of relationship he felt safe having. She was brushing her teeth when she heard music coming from somewhere in the penthouse classical piano, played with skill and surprising emotion. Olivia followed the sound down the hallway to a partially open door she hadn't noticed before. Through the crack, she could see Nicholas at a grand piano, his fingers moving across the keys with practiced ease. He had changed into a t-shirt and pajama pants, and his hair was mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it. But it was the expression on his face that stopped Olivia in her tracks. He looked peaceful, vulnerable. The carefully controlled mask he wore during the day was completely gone, replaced by something raw and beautiful. The music he was playing was melancholy but gorgeous, full of longing and sadness, and something that might have been hope. Olivia stood there for several minutes, transfixed by this glimpse of the real Nicholas Grant, the man who played piano in the dark, who had kind eyes, and who took care of housekeepers who scolded him about his choice in women. She was so absorbed in watching him that she didn't notice when the music stopped. "Are you going to stand there all night, or are you going to come in?" Olivia's face flamed. "I'm sorry. I heard the music and I didn't mean to spy." Nicholas turned on the piano bench to face her, and Olivia was struck again by how different he looked without his business armor. Younger, more human. "It's fine. I don't mind an audience." Olivia hesitated, then stepped into the room. It was clearly Nicholas's private space, more personal than the rest of the penthouse. There were photos on the mantel, books scattered on tables, a guitar in the corner. "You play beautifully," she said. "What was that piece?" "Something I wrote a few years ago." Nicholas's fingers drifted over the keys, picking out a simple melody. "I don't usually play it for other people." "Why not?" "It's beautiful." Nicholas was quiet for a moment, those green eyes studying her face in the dim light. "Because it's too honest." Olivia felt her breath catch at the simple admission. This was the most real thing he'd said to her since they'd met. "Honesty isn't always a bad thing," she said softly. "In my experience, it usually is." They looked at each other across the dimly lit room, and Olivia felt something shift between them again. Something that had nothing to do with contracts or business arrangements, and everything to do with the way Nicholas was looking at her, like she was something precious and fragile and completely unexpected. "I should let you get some sleep," Olivia said finally, even though she didn't want to leave. "Probably." But Nicholas didn't look away from her. "Olivia, thank you for agreeing to this. I know it's not easy. We're helping each other, remember? That's what partners do." Something flickered in Nicholas's eyes at the word partners, but he just nodded. "Good night, Olivia." "Good night, Nicholas." As Olivia walked back to her room, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just seen the real Nicholas Grant, not the billionaire businessman or the society playboy, but the man who played melancholy piano in the dark and had walls built so high around his heart that even he couldn't see over them anymore. She was in serious trouble, because despite everything, the contract, the rules, the 6-month timeline, she was starting to care about him, really care about him. And that was definitely not part of their business arrangement. The Whitney Museum of American Art, Grant Holdings Corporate Gala. 2 weeks later, Olivia stared at her reflection in the floor-length mirror of Nicholas's bedroom, barely recognizing the woman looking back at her. The midnight blue Valentino gown hugged her curves in all the right places, the silk so fine it felt like liquid against her skin. Diamond earrings, real diamonds, Not the cubic zirconia she was used to caught the light as she turned her head. Her hair had been styled by someone whose hourly rate was probably more than Olivia made in a week, swept up in an elegant chignon that made her neck look impossibly long. She looked like she belonged in Nicholas's world. The problem was, she didn't feel like it. "You clean up nice, Harper." Olivia spun around to find Nicholas in the doorway, and her breath caught in her throat. If she looked good, he looked absolutely devastating in his custom tuxedo. The black fabric was cut to perfection, emphasizing his broad shoulders and lean waist. His dark hair was styled just so, and when he smiled, that slow, dangerous smile that had gotten her into this mess in the first place, Olivia felt her knees go weak. "It's Mrs. Grant now, remember?" she said, trying to keep her voice light. "We're newlyweds, madly in love." "Right." Something flickered in Nicholas's eyes at her words, but it was gone so quickly, Olivia thought she might have imagined it. "Are you ready for this?" Olivia picked up the small clutch purse that probably cost more than her monthly salary. "As ready as I'll ever be, though I have to ask, why the Whitney? Why not something more traditional for a corporate event?" Nicholas moved into the room, and Olivia caught a whiff of his cologne, that same intoxicating combination of cedar and spice that had haunted her dreams for the past 2 weeks. Because Grant Holdings isn't a traditional company, we're about innovation, about supporting the arts, about investing in culture. The Whitney represents everything we stand for, and it doesn't hurt that you own a significant portion of their endowment, Olivia added dryly. "That too." Nicholas's smile was unapologetic. "Business is business, Olivia. But that doesn't mean it can't also be meaningful." Olivia studied his face, looking for any sign that he was putting on an act, but she was beginning to realize that with Nicholas, the lines between genuine emotion and calculated strategy were often blurred beyond recognition. "There's something we need to discuss before we go," Nicholas said, his expression growing serious. "Oh no. What now?" "Physical contact." Nicholas's voice was carefully neutral, but Olivia noticed the way his hands clenched slightly at his sides. "We're supposed to be newlyweds. People will expect us to be affectionate." Olivia felt heat creep up her neck. They'd been living in the same penthouse for 2 weeks, but they'd been careful to maintain physical distance. The most contact they'd had was the occasional brush of fingers when passing coffee cups, or the brief moment when Nicholas had steadied her after she'd tripped over her own feet coming down the stairs. "What kind of affectionate?" she asked, proud that her voice came out steady. "Hand-holding. My arm around your waist. Maybe." Nicholas cleared his throat. "Maybe the occasional kiss on the cheek or forehead." Olivia's heart started racing at the thought of Nicholas's lips on her skin, even in something as innocent as a cheek kiss. "That seems reasonable." "Good." Nicholas moved closer, close enough that Olivia could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. "We should probably practice physical affection. If we're going to be convincing, we need to look comfortable with each other." Nicholas held out his hand. "May I?" Olivia stared at his outstretched hand for a moment, then slowly placed her palm against his. The contact was electric, literally electric. She felt sparks shoot up her arm and settle somewhere in the vicinity of her heart. Nicholas's fingers closed around hers, warm and strong, and slightly calloused in a way that surprised her. She'd expected a businessman's hands to be soft, but Nicholas's told a different story. "You have calluses," she said without thinking. Nicholas looked down at their joined hands. "I used to work construction summers during college. Old habits." "You worked construction?" Olivia couldn't hide her surprise. "But you're rich." Nicholas's smile was self-deprecating. "My father believed in earning what you had. Every summer from age 16 to 21, I worked regular jobs, construction, waiting tables, retail. He said I couldn't understand the value of money unless I knew what it felt like to really work for it." Olivia felt another piece of the Nicholas Grant puzzle click into place. "That's why Mrs. Liu said you were different. You actually understand what it's like to be normal." "I wouldn't go that far." Nicholas lifted their joined hands and brushed his thumb across her knuckles, a gesture so gentle and intimate that Olivia's breath caught. "But I remember what it felt like to worry about making rent." They stood there for a moment, hands clasped, and Olivia felt the air between them crackling with tension. This was supposed to be practice a business exercise, but the way Nicholas was looking at her, like she was something precious and fascinating, made it feel like anything but business. "We should go," Nicholas said finally, but he didn't let go of her hand. "The car is waiting." The ride to the Whitney was a study in controlled tension. Nicholas kept one hand on Olivia's knee, a casual gesture that was probably meant to look natural, but instead sent electricity shooting through her entire nervous system. Every time the car hit a bump or turned a corner, his fingers would tighten slightly, and Olivia had to concentrate on breathing normally. "Remember," Nicholas murmured as they pulled up to the museum, "we're madly in love. We can't keep our hands off each other. We're still in the honeymoon phase." Olivia nodded, trying to ignore the way his breath tickled her ear when he spoke. "Got it. Madly in love. Honeymoon phase. Hands everywhere." Nicholas's laugh was low and intimate. "Maybe not everywhere, Mrs. Grant. This is still a business event." The way he said Mrs. Grant sent shivers down Olivia's spine. She was definitely in trouble. The Whitney's entrance was lit up like a movie premiere, with photographers clustered behind velvet ropes and valets in crisp uniforms, helping guests from their cars. Olivia had been to museum events before, but nothing like this. This was New York society at its most glittering and intimidating. "Smile," Nicholas whispered as he helped her from the car. "You're blissfully happy to be married to me." Olivia plastered on what she hoped was a believable smile as camera flashes exploded around them. Nicholas's arm slipped around her waist, pulling her close against his side, and Olivia was grateful for the contact. Without his steady presence, she might have bolted back to the car. "Grant. Mr. Grant!" The photographers were shouting questions, but Nicholas just smiled and waved, guiding Olivia smoothly through the chaos toward the museum entrance. "Is it always like this?" Olivia asked once they were inside. "The photographers?" "Only when there's fresh blood." Nicholas's smile was wry. "They've been trying to figure out who you are for weeks. Tonight's the big reveal." The Whitney's main gallery had been transformed into an elegant cocktail space, with servers circulating through the crowd carrying champagne, and what Olivia was sure were extremely expensive canapes. The guest list was a who's who of New York's cultural and business elite. Olivia spotted at least 3 people she'd seen on the cover of Forbes. "Nicholas!" A voice boomed from across the room, and Olivia turned to see a distinguished man in his 60s approaching them with a genuine smile. "There's the man of the hour, Robert." Nicholas shook the man's hand warmly. "Olivia, this is Robert Liu, Mrs. Liu's brother and the director of the Whitney. Robert, meet my wife, Olivia." The mysterious Olivia. Robert's eyes twinkled with good humor. "My sister has told me so much about you. She's quite taken with you, you know." "Mrs. Liu is wonderful," Olivia said sincerely. "She's been taking very good care of me. She always was a good judge of character." Robert's gaze moved between Olivia and Nicholas, and something in his expression suggested he was seeing more than they probably wanted him to. "I have to say, I've never seen Nicholas look so relaxed." Nicholas's arm tightened around Olivia's waist. "Marriage agrees with me." Apparently, Robert's smile was knowing. "Olivia, I understand you're a curator at the Met. We should talk about collaboration opportunities sometime. The Whitney is always looking for fresh perspectives on contemporary acquisitions." Olivia felt a flutter of excitement. Robert Liu was one of the most respected museum directors in the country. Having his professional interest could be huge for her career. "I would love that." As Robert moved on to greet other guests, Nicholas leaned down to whisper in Olivia's ear, "See? I told you this arrangement would have benefits. Is that what you call Robert Liu taking professional interest in me? A benefit of our arrangement? Everything in my world is connected, Olivia. The sooner you understand that, the easier this will be." Before Olivia could respond, another voice interrupted them. Well, if it isn't the happy couple." Olivia turned to find a woman approaching them, tall, blonde, and stunning in the way that spoke of excellent breeding and even better cosmetic surgery. She was wearing a red dress that probably cost more than Olivia's car, and her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Nicholas's entire body went rigid beside her. "Catherine." Olivia's stomach dropped. This was her, the ex-fiancée who had broken Nicholas's heart and run off with his business partner. Catherine was even more beautiful than Olivia had imagined, with the kind of effortless elegance that came from being born into wealth and privilege. "Nicholas." Catherine's voice was honey-sweet, with an underlying edge of steel. "You look wonderful. Marriage clearly suits you." "Catherine, this is my wife, Olivia." Olivia Catherine Ashford. Catherine's ice-blue eyes swept over Olivia, with the kind of assessment that wealthy women had perfected into an art form. Olivia felt like a specimen under a microscope, every detail of her appearance being catalogued and judged. "Charming," Catherine said finally, though her tone suggested she found Olivia anything but. "Tell me, Olivia, how did you manage to catch our Nicholas? So many have tried and failed." Olivia felt Nicholas's tension in every line of his body. She could also sense that Catherine's question was loaded with malice. This was a test, and Olivia was pretty sure Catherine expected her to fail. "I didn't catch him," Olivia said smoothly. moving closer to Nicholas and letting her hand rest on his chest. We caught each other. She looked up at Nicholas as she spoke, and for a moment she forgot they were acting. The way he was looking at her, intense and possessive and something that might have been grateful, made her feel like the most important person in the room. Nicholas's hand covered hers on his chest, his fingers intertwining with hers. "Olivia has a way of seeing through pretenses," he said, his voice low and intimate. "It's one of the things I love most about her." Catherine's smile grew even sharper. How refreshing. Nicholas always did prefer the authentic types. The way she said authentic made it sound like a disease. Olivia felt her temper start to rise, but Nicholas's thumb stroking across her knuckles reminded her that they had an audience. "Authenticity is underrated in our circles," Olivia said with a smile that was all teeth. "I find that most people who have to work so hard to appear sophisticated usually aren't." Catherine's eyes flashed with something that might have been respect. "How delightfully direct. I can see why Nicholas finds you entertaining." "Catherine." Nicholas's voice carried a warning that made several nearby conversations pause. "I believe your date is looking for you." Catherine glanced over her shoulder to where a silver-haired man in an expensive suit was indeed scanning the room with obvious impatience. "David does hate to be kept waiting. But it was lovely meeting you, Olivia. I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of each other." As Catherine glided away, Olivia felt some of the tension leave Nicholas's body. "That went well," she said dryly. "You were perfect." Nicholas's voice was rough, with something that sounded like genuine emotion. "The way you handled her, that was exactly what she needed to hear." "She's still in love with you." Nicholas looked down at her in surprise. "What makes you say that?" "The way she looked at you. The way she made sure to mention that you prefer authentic types." She was trying to make it sound like settling. Olivia studied his face. "She regrets what she did." "Catherine regrets getting caught." "Not what she did." Nicholas's expression was carefully neutral, but Olivia could see the old hurt in his eyes. "She made her choice, and now I've made mine." "Yes." Nicholas's hand tightened on hers. "I have." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions, business conversations, and careful public displays of affection. Olivia found herself slipping into the role more easily than she'd expected, laughing at Nicholas's jokes, letting him feed her bites of dessert, leaning into his touch when he whispered in her ear. The problem was, it was starting to feel less like acting and more like something else. By the time they left the museum, Olivia's feet were killing her in her designer heels, but she felt oddly exhilarated. She'd held her own in a room full of New York's elite, charmed a museum director, and faced down Nicholas's manipulative ex-fiancé. Not bad for a girl from Connecticut. "You were incredible tonight," Nicholas said as their car pulled away from the museum. "I've never seen Catherine look so rattled." "She's beautiful," Olivia said, then immediately regretted the admission. "She's poison wrapped in pretty packaging." Nicholas's voice was flat. "Beauty doesn't mean much when there's nothing real underneath it." Olivia turned to study his profile in the dim light of the car. "Is that why you're so careful about keeping things surface level? Because of what happened with her?" Nicholas was quiet for so long that Olivia thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Catherine taught me that the people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you the most. She knew exactly where all my weak spots were, and she used every single one of them." Nicholas's jaw tightened. "I won't make that mistake again." Olivia felt her heart clench at the pain in his voice. "Not everyone is like her, Nicholas." "How can you be sure?" "Because I'm not like her." Nicholas turned to look at her then, his green eyes searching her face in the shadows of the car. "No," he said finally, "you're not." The air between them was charged with tension, heavy with all the things they weren't saying. Olivia could feel herself being pulled toward him like a magnet drawn by something deeper than physical attraction. This was dangerous territory, the kind of emotional intimacy their contract explicitly prohibited. But when Nicholas reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek, Olivia couldn't bring herself to pull away. "Olivia." Nicholas's voice was rough, uncertain. "This thing between us, I know." Olivia's whisper was barely audible. "It's not supposed to be real, but it feels real." "Yes." Olivia closed her eyes as Nicholas's thumb traced across her cheekbone. "It does." For a moment, Olivia thought he might kiss her. She could see the want in his eyes, could feel the tension coiling between them like a spring wound too tight. But then the car pulled to a stop in front of their building, and Nicholas dropped his hand like he'd been burned. "We should go up," he said, his voice carefully controlled once again. Olivia nodded, trying to ignore the disappointment that crashed through her. "Right. It's late." The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent, but Olivia could feel Nicholas's presence like a physical force beside her. Every breath seemed too loud, every casual movement charged with significance. At the door to her room, Nicholas paused. "Olivia." "Yeah? Thank you for tonight, for all of this." Nicholas's smile was soft, genuine. "I know this isn't what you signed up for." Olivia looked at his face, really looked at him. The careful businessman's mask was gone, replaced by something vulnerable and real, and utterly devastating. This was the man who played melancholy piano in the dark, who took care of surrogate mothers who scolded him, who'd learned to protect his heart by never letting anyone close enough to break it. "Actually," Olivia said softly, "I think it's exactly what I signed up for. I just didn't know it at the time." Nicholas's eyes widened slightly at her admission, and for a heartbeat, Olivia thought he might say something, might acknowledge the feelings that were clearly building between them, despite all their rules and contracts and careful boundaries. Instead, he took a step back. "Good night, Olivia." "Good night, Nicholas." Olivia closed her door and leaned against it, her heart racing. She was falling for him, despite every logical reason why she shouldn't, despite every warning her rational mind was screaming. She was falling hard for Nicholas Grant. And from the way he'd looked at her tonight like she was something precious and unexpected and terrifying, she was starting to think he might be falling for her too, which meant they were both in a lot more trouble than their carefully worded contract could possibly cover. Grant Holdings headquarters and various NYC locations. 3 weeks later, Olivia stood in the conference room on the 42nd floor of Grant Tower, watching Nicholas command the room with an authority that was both impressive and slightly intimidating. He was in full CEO mode, sharp suit, sharper mind, and that particular brand of focused intensity that made grown men twice his age hang on his every word. She'd been attending these board meetings for the past 3 weeks, ostensibly to support her husband, but really to learn how Nicholas's world actually worked. What she discovered was that Nicholas Grant wasn't just wealthy, he was brilliant. The way he analyzed market trends, anticipated problems, and orchestrated solutions was like watching a master chess player think 15 moves ahead. "The Singapore acquisition is moving forward on schedule," Nicholas was saying, his voice carrying easily across the mahogany table, "but I want environmental impact studies completed before we break ground. Grant Holdings doesn't build at the expense of local ecosystems." Robert Ellison, the company's chief financial officer, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Nicholas, the environmental studies will add at least 6 months to the timeline. Our investors are expecting sustainable long-term growth, not a quick profit followed by public relations disasters." Nicholas's tone was polite but final. "The studies get done." Olivia found herself smiling despite the serious nature of the discussion. This was yet another side of Nicholas. She was discovering the man who could have cut corners and maximized profits, but chose the harder, more ethical path instead. It was attractive in a way that had nothing to do with his physical appearance, and everything to do with his character. "Mrs. Grant seems to approve of your environmental stance," observed Margaret Liu, Mrs. Liu's daughter and the company's head of public relations. She was sharp, elegant, and had inherited her mother's ability to see everything while appearing to focus on nothing. Olivia felt heat creep up her neck as 12 pairs of eyes turned to her. "I think it's important for companies to consider their impact beyond just profit margins," she said, proud that her voice came out steady. "Especially companies with Grant Holdings influence, spoken like a true museum curator," said David Wong, the youngest member of the board at 35, "always thinking about preservation. Actually, I was thinking like someone who wants her children to inherit a livable planet." Olivia replied with a smile that took any sting out of her words. Museum curators just happen to be good at thinking long-term. Nicholas's eyes met hers across the table, and something warm and appreciative flickered in their green depths. "Olivia has been invaluable in helping me think through the cultural implications of our international expansions," he said. "Her perspective on how American companies are perceived abroad has been illuminating." Olivia tried not to show her surprise. Nicholas had been asking for her opinions on various business matters over their morning coffee, but she hadn't realized he was actually incorporating her feedback into company decisions. The meeting continued for another hour, covering everything from quarterly projections to a proposed partnership with a renewable energy firm. Olivia found herself genuinely interested in the discussions, particularly when they touched on Grant Holdings' arts funding initiatives. "Before we adjourn," Nicholas said, "I want to announce that Grant Holdings will be sponsoring a new contemporary art acquisition fund at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Olivia will be overseeing the selection process." Olivia's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "I'm sorry, what?" "The Olivia Harper Contemporary Art Fund," Nicholas continued smoothly, as if he hadn't just dropped a bomb that would change her entire career trajectory. Initial funding of $5 million. With the possibility of expansion based on results, the room buzzed with murmurs of approval. But Olivia barely heard them. $5 million to buy contemporary art, with her making the decisions. It was the kind of opportunity curators spent their entire careers hoping for. It was also exactly the kind of grand gesture that blurred the lines between their business arrangement and something much more personal. After the meeting ended and the board members filed out, Olivia stayed behind, her mind reeling. "You can't just announce something like that without talking to me first," she said when they were alone. Nicholas was gathering his papers, but he looked up at her words. "You don't want the position?" "Of course, I want the position. It's incredible." Olivia stood up and began pacing the length of the conference room. "It's a dream come true. But that's not the point. The point is that this isn't part of our arrangement. Our arrangement is that we help each other professionally and personally. This helps you professionally. This is beyond helping, Nicholas. This is life-changing." Nicholas set down his papers and really looked at her. "And that's a problem because—" Olivia stopped pacing and faced him. "Because it's too much. Because it makes this feel too real." Because she trailed off, unable to voice what she was really afraid of. "Because you're worried about what happens when our 6 months are up." Nicholas finished quietly. Olivia nodded, grateful that he understood without her having to spell it out. "What happens to the fund when we get divorced? What happens to my credibility when people find out our marriage was fake?" Nicholas was quiet for a long moment, his green eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed. "What if we don't get divorced?" The words hung in the air between them like a challenge, and Olivia felt her heart skip several beats. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe the lines between fake and real aren't as clear as we thought they were." Nicholas moved closer, close enough that Olivia could smell his cologne and see the uncertainty in his eyes. "I'm saying that maybe this doesn't have to end in 6 months. Olivia's breath caught. "Nicholas, I know what the contract says. I know what we agreed to, but Olivia, what we have. This isn't what I expected." "What did you expect?" "A business partnership. Mutual benefit. Clean and simple." Nicholas's laugh was self-deprecating. "I certainly didn't expect to find myself looking forward to your terrible jokes over breakfast every morning." "My jokes aren't terrible. Your coffee puns are crimes against humanity." Despite everything, Olivia found herself smiling. "You laugh at them, because your face lights up when you tell them." And that's— Nicholas stopped, seeming to realize what he was about to admit. "That's what," Olivia prompted softly, "that's the best part of my day." The simple admission hit Olivia like a physical blow. This was dangerous territory, the kind of emotional honesty their contract explicitly prohibited. But looking at Nicholas's face, seeing the vulnerability in his expression, Olivia couldn't bring herself to retreat behind their carefully constructed walls. "Mine too," she whispered. For a moment they just looked at each other, the weight of their mutual admission settling between them. Then Nicholas's phone buzzed. Breaking the spell. "We should go," he said, checking the message. "We have lunch with your parents in an hour." Olivia's stomach dropped. Oh no, I completely forgot. Her parents had driven down from Connecticut to meet their new son-in-law, and Olivia had been dreading this moment for weeks. Her mother, Claire Harper, had an uncanny ability to see through any deception, and her father, Henry, was the kind of man who asked direct questions and expected honest answers. "It'll be fine," Nicholas said, though he looked almost as nervous as Olivia felt. "I'm good with parents. You're good with board members and socialites. My parents are different." An hour later, they were seated in a cozy Italian restaurant in Little Italy, Olivia's choice, because she'd thought her parents would be more comfortable somewhere casual than at one of Nicholas's usual high-end establishments. Watching her father, a hardware store owner from small-town Connecticut, shake hands with one of the most powerful men in America was surreal. "So, Nicholas," Claire Harper said after they'd ordered, her kind eyes studying Nicholas with maternal interest, "Olivia tells us you two met at a gallery opening." Olivia nearly choked on her water. That wasn't the story they'd agreed on. But apparently her mother had filled in her own details. "Actually, we met at a charity gala," Nicholas corrected smoothly. "Olivia was there representing the Met, and I was immediately struck by her passion for art." "Love at first sight?" Henry Harper asked with the slightly skeptical tone Olivia remembered from her teenage years. "More like recognition at first sight," Nicholas said, and something in his voice made Olivia look at him sharply, like I'd been waiting my whole life to meet someone exactly like her. Olivia felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. The way Nicholas was looking at her as he spoke made her wonder if he was still acting or if some truth was slipping through. That's beautiful. Claire sighed. And the wedding in Tuscany, how romantic. I still can't believe you didn't tell us you were getting married. It happened very quickly, Olivia said, feeling guilty about lying to her parents. We just knew. When you know, Henry agreed, though his sharp eyes continued to assess Nicholas. What are your intentions with my daughter? Dad, Olivia protested. But Nicholas held up a hand. It's a fair question. Nicholas turned to face Henry directly. Harper, your daughter is the most genuine, intelligent, and caring person I've ever met. My intention is to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of her. Olivia's breath caught at the sincerity in his voice. If she didn't know better, she'd think he actually meant it. The lunch continued with Henry grilling Nicholas about everything from his business practices to his thoughts on work-life balance. Nicholas handled every question with grace and honesty, sharing stories about growing up without parents and building his company from the ground up. Olivia found herself seeing him through her parents' eyes, not as the intimidating billionaire, but as a man who'd overcome tragedy and worked hard for everything he had. He's lovely, Claire whispered to Olivia when the men stepped away to take a business call. A little intense, maybe, but you can see how much he adores you. Olivia followed her mother's gaze to where Nicholas was standing near the restaurant's window, phone pressed to his ear. Even in the middle of what sounded like a serious business conversation, his eyes kept drifting back to their table, back to her. It's complicated, Mom. The best relationships usually are. Claire reached over and squeezed Olivia's hand. Your father and I didn't have an easy start either. He was convinced I was too good for him, and I was convinced he was too stubborn for anyone. Turns out we were both right and both wrong. After her parents left to drive back to Connecticut, Olivia and Nicholas walked slowly through Central Park. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting everything in golden light, and Olivia felt oddly melancholy. Your parents are wonderful, Nicholas said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. They liked you. My dad doesn't like anyone easily. What gave it away? He asked about your golf game. He only does that with people he's planning to invite to his annual summer barbecue. Nicholas smiled. I hope you warned him that I'm terrible at golf. Are you kidding? That'll make him like you even more. He loves having someone to give lessons to. They walked in silence for a while, watching joggers and dog walkers enjoy the beautiful day. Olivia found herself thinking about Nicholas's words in the conference room about what would happen if they didn't get divorced, if they let this fake marriage become something real. Nicholas, she said finally, what you said earlier about extending our arrangement. Forget I said anything. Nicholas's voice was carefully controlled. It was unprofessional. What if I don't want to forget it? Nicholas stopped walking and turned to face her. Olivia, what if I've been thinking the same thing? What if this feels too real? Because it is real. For a moment, hope flickered in Nicholas's green eyes. Then his expression shuddered, and Olivia could practically see him rebuilding his emotional walls in real time. It's not real, he said firmly. It's proximity. It's the situation. We're playing house, and it's easy to get caught up in the fantasy. Olivia felt like had slapped her. Is that what you think this is? A fantasy? I think we're both intelligent people who got a little carried away. Nicholas's voice was cool, professional. The contract is clear. Olivia, 6 months. No emotional attachments, no complications. And what we just talked about in the conference room, what about that? A moment of weakness. It won't happen again. Olivia stared at him, trying to reconcile this cold, distant man with the one who'd played piano for her in the dark, who'd defended her environmental concerns in a board meeting, who'd looked at her parents like he genuinely wanted their approval. Fine, she said finally. If that's how you want to play it, it's how we agreed to play it. The walk back to the penthouse was silent and tense. Olivia felt like she was watching Nicholas retreat into himself, becoming the untouchable businessman again. By the time they reached their building, it was like the moment of vulnerability in the conference room had never happened. That evening, Olivia sat in the penthouse's library, trying to focus on a book about contemporary art movements, but her mind kept drifting to Nicholas's words, to the way he'd shut down the moment things got too real. She was so lost in thought that she almost missed the sound of piano music drifting from down the hall. The melody was different tonight, angrier, more conflicted. Olivia set down her book and followed the sound to Nicholas's music room. He was at the piano, still in his business clothes, but with his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. His hands moved across the keys with controlled violence, pouring emotion into the music that he couldn't allow himself to express anywhere else. Olivia stood in the doorway, transfixed by the raw emotion in his playing. This was the real Nicholas, the one who felt everything deeply but had learned to hide it so well that even he sometimes forgot it was there. The music stopped abruptly when Nicholas noticed her presence. I'm sorry, Olivia said. I didn't mean to interrupt. It's fine. Nicholas's voice was carefully neutral. Did you need something? Olivia stepped into the room, noting the way Nicholas tensed at her approach. What was that piece? The one you were just playing? Nothing. Just something I was working on. It sounded angry. Did it? Nicholas's smile was polite and completely false. I hadn't noticed. Olivia wanted to scream at him to shake him until he admitted that he felt something for her, that this connection between them was real and worth exploring. Instead, she found herself saying, "The Art Fund announcement today, thank you. It really is an incredible opportunity. You don't have to thank me. It's good business. The Met gets contemporary art. Grant Holdings gets positive press. And you get career advancement. Everyone wins. Is that really all it was? Business?" Nicholas met her gaze directly, his green eyes revealing nothing. What else would it be? Olivia felt something crack inside her chest. Right. Of course. Just business. She turned to leave, but Nicholas's voice stopped her at the doorway. Olivia. Yes? The fund is yours, regardless of what happens between us. I want you to know that. Olivia nodded without turning around. I understand. Good night, Nicholas. Good night. Back in her room, Olivia sat on her bed and stared out at the city lights, trying to make sense of the emotional whiplash of the day. One moment, Nicholas was suggesting they make their marriage real. The next, he was retreating behind his businessman facade and treating her like a contracted employee. She understood why he was scared. Catherine had hurt him badly, and trust didn't come easily to a man who'd learned early that the people closest to you were the ones who could destroy you. But understanding his fear didn't make it hurt any less when he used it as a weapon against her. Olivia's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. We had such a lovely time today. Nicholas is clearly crazy about you, sweetheart. Don't let pride get in the way of happiness. If only it were that simple. Olivia thought, if only Nicholas would let himself be crazy about her instead of fighting it every step of the way. A knock on her door interrupted her brooding. Olivia opened it to find Mrs. Liu holding a tray with tea and what looked like homemade cookies. You look sad, Mrs. Liu announced, pushing past Olivia into the room. Nicholas looked sad too. Both of you sitting in different rooms being sad instead of talking to each other. Mrs. Liu, it's complicated. It's not complicated. You love him. He loves you. You're both too stubborn to admit it. Mrs. Liu set the tray down and fixed Olivia with a stern look. I raised that boy, and I've never seen him care about anyone the way he cares about you. He has a funny way of showing it. He's scared. Mrs. Liu's expression softened. That Catherine woman, she broke something in him, made him think that caring about someone meant giving them the power to destroy him. Olivia sank down on her bed. So what am I supposed to do? Wait around hoping he'll eventually decide I'm worth the risk? You're supposed to be patient, and you're supposed to fight for him. Mrs. Liu sat down beside Olivia. That boy has been alone his whole life, Olivia. Even when his parents were alive, they were too busy with business to really see him. He doesn't know how to let people in. Maybe he doesn't want to let me in. Maybe he's terrified of how much he wants to let you in. Mrs. Liu patted Olivia's hand. Give him time, but don't give up on him. After Mrs. Liu left, Olivia lay in bed staring at the ceiling. 3 months left on their contract. 3 months to figure out if what they had was worth fighting for, or if she was just fooling herself about Nicholas's feelings. Outside her window, the city hummed with life and possibility. Somewhere in this same penthouse, Nicholas was probably lying in his own bed, staring at his own ceiling, fighting the same internal battle between what he wanted and what he thought was safe. Olivia closed her eyes and made a decision. She wouldn't give up on him. Not yet. But she also wouldn't wait around indefinitely for him to decide she was worth the risk. If Nicholas Grant wanted to keep playing games, she'd show him that Olivia Harper was a worthy opponent. After all, she'd spent her career studying art, and she knew something about patience, persistence, and the value of things that were worth waiting for. The question was, would Nicholas let himself be convinced that some risks were worth taking? Only time would tell. Various NYC locations. The final month. The charity auction at the Guggenheim was in full swing, with Manhattan's elite bidding astronomical amounts on everything from weekend getaways to private art collections. Olivia stood beside Nicholas, playing the role of the devoted wife, while internally counting down the days until their contract expired. 23 days. Not that she was keeping track or anything. Lot 47, the auctioneer announced, a private piano performance by world-renowned classical pianist Elena Moreau in the winner's home. Bidding starts at $50,000. Olivia felt Nicholas tense beside her. She glanced up at his face and was surprised to see something that looked almost like longing in his expression. You know her, Olivia said quietly. We went to Juilliard together before. Nicholas's voice trailed off. Before everything changed, Olivia studied his profile, noting the way his jaw tightened when he mentioned Juilliard, another piece of the Nicholas Grant puzzle she hadn't known existed. You went to music school? For 2 years, my parents thought it was a waste of time, said I needed to focus on business training. They died during my sophomore year, and I dropped out to run the company. Nicholas's voice was carefully neutral, but Olivia could hear the old regret underneath. Elena was. She was my best friend. We were going to graduate together, maybe start a piano duo. What happened to that dream? Dreams are luxuries I couldn't afford. The bidding for Elena's performance was climbing rapidly. 75,000, 100,000, 125. Olivia watched Nicholas's face, seeing the war between want and practicality playing out in his green eyes. Without really thinking about it, Olivia raised her paddle. 150,000. She called out clearly. Nicholas stared at her in shock. Olivia, what are you doing? 175. Came a voice from across the room. Olivia looked directly at Nicholas as she raised her paddle again. 200,000. The auctioneer looked around the room hopefully, but no other paddles appeared. Going once, going twice. Sold to Mrs. Grant for $200,000. Scattered applause filled the room, but Olivia barely heard it. She was too focused on Nicholas's face, which had gone through several emotions in rapid succession: shock, confusion, and something that might have been gratitude. Why did you do that? He asked quietly as they moved away from the auction area. Because 20 years from now, when you're sitting alone in that big penthouse, you'll regret not reconnecting with an old friend more than you'll regret spending $200,000. Nicholas was quiet for a long moment, his green eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed. It's not my money you just spent. It's technically ours. According to the contract, Olivia lifted her chin. Consider it my wedding gift to my husband. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning that went far beyond their business arrangement. Nicholas's expression softened, and for a moment, Olivia thought he might say something real, something that acknowledged the feelings they'd been dancing around for months. Instead, he straightened his tie and slipped back into businessman mode. Thank you. That was thoughtful. Olivia felt the familiar sting of his emotional retreat, but she was getting better at hiding her disappointment. You're welcome. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of champagne, small talk, and carefully choreographed public affection. Olivia smiled and played her part, but inside she was planning. 23 days left meant 23 days to either break through Nicholas's walls or accept that some people were too afraid of getting hurt to ever really live. The next morning, Olivia was in the kitchen making coffee when Mrs. Liu bustled in with her usual no-nonsense energy. Elena Moreau called. Liu announced without preamble, she wants to schedule the performance for this Friday evening. She was very excited to hear from Nicholas after all these years. Olivia nearly dropped her coffee mug. She called already? Apparently word travels fast in classical music circles. She also mentioned that she's been following Nicholas's career and is proud of what he's accomplished. Mrs. Liu gave Olivia a knowing look. That was a good thing you did last night. I just thought he needed to reconnect with his past. Olivia shrugged. Nicholas has spent so many years running from anything that reminds him of who he used to be before the business, before the responsibility, before he learned that caring about people means they can hurt you. Mrs. Liu began preparing breakfast with efficient movements. Maybe it's time he remembered that caring about people also means they can heal you. Friday evening arrived with unseasonable warmth for October in New York. Olivia had spent the day at the Met finalizing details for the first acquisitions from the Olivia Harper Contemporary Art Fund. It still felt surreal to see her name on official museum documents, to have respected colleagues asking for her opinions on pieces worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. She arrived home to find the penthouse transformed. The formal living room had been reconfigured to showcase the grand piano, with elegant lighting and chairs arranged for an intimate concert. Nicholas was everywhere at once, adjusting the acoustics, checking the sightlines, making sure every detail was perfect. You're nervous, Olivia observed as she watched him move a chair for the third time. I'm ensuring our guest has everything she needs for optimal performance conditions, Nicholas corrected stiffly. You're nervous, Olivia repeated with a smile. It's okay to admit it. You know she was your best friend, was being the operative phrase. People change, Olivia. 20 years is a long time. Before Olivia could respond, the doorbell rang. Nicholas froze like a deer in headlights. and Olivia realized that underneath all his success and confidence, he was still that 20-year-old kid who'd had to give up his dreams to save his family's company. "I'll get it," Olivia said gently. Elena Moreau was nothing like Olivia had expected. Instead of the austere classical musician stereotype, she was warm and vibrant, with graying dark hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She embraced Olivia like an old friend, before they'd even been properly introduced. "You must be the Olivia I've been reading about," Elena said with a slight accent that suggested European training. "The woman who finally convinced this stubborn man to buy me at auction." "Guilty as charged," Olivia replied, already liking Elena's directness. "Where is he? Still hiding in the kitchen like he used to when he was nervous about performing?" Olivia laughed. "How did you know?" "Because Nicholas Grant has been nervous about exactly 3 things in his entire life: performing solo, talking to his father about anything important, and apparently reuniting with old friends." Nicholas appeared in the doorway as if summoned by their conversation. For a moment he and Elena just looked at each other, 20 years of separation and different life paths hanging between them. Then Elena smiled. "There's my Nicholas. Still tall, still serious, still trying to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders." "Elena," Nicholas's voice was rough with emotion. He was trying to hide. "You look exactly the same." "Liar. I look 20 years older and considerably wiser." Elena crossed the room and pulled Nicholas into a hug that he returned after a moment's hesitation. "But you look tired, my friend. Success agrees with you, but happiness, that's harder to read." Olivia felt like she was intruding on something private, but Elena drew her into the conversation with natural ease. "Now tell me about this famous romance," Elena said, settling into one of the chairs. "The papers make it sound very romantic, secret wedding in Tuscany, whirlwind courtship, but the Nicholas I knew was far too analytical to do anything impulsive." Olivia felt heat creep up her neck. "It was unexpected for both of us." "Unexpected how?" Elena's eyes were sharp, missing nothing. Elena Nicholas's voice carried a warning. "What?" "I'm curious about the woman who managed to catch Manhattan's most eligible bachelor, especially since that same bachelor once told me he was never getting married because he didn't believe in love." Olivia's stomach dropped. "He said that?" "Oh yes, senior year at Juilliard, after his girlfriend cheated on him with his roommate. Very dramatic. Very final declaration." Elena waved her hand dismissively. "Of course, that was before he met you." Nicholas looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Elena, perhaps we should discuss the performance. The performance can wait. I want to hear how Olivia changed your mind about love." The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia could feel Nicholas's tension from across the room, could see the carefully constructed walls he'd built around his heart. She also realized that Elena, with her artist's intuition, had picked up on something being not quite right between them. "I didn't change his mind," Olivia said quietly. "I just showed him that some risks are worth taking." "And are they?" Elena asked, looking directly at Nicholas. "Worth taking?" Nicholas met Olivia's gaze across the room, and for a moment she saw everything he was feeling laid bare in his green eyes. Love, fear, longing, and the terrible vulnerability of someone who'd spent his whole life protecting himself from exactly this moment. "I don't know," he said honestly. Elena looked between them for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. "Well," she said finally, "perhaps we should let the music help us figure that out." The performance that followed was nothing short of magical. Elena Moreau played Chopin, Debussy, and Rachmaninoff, with the kind of technical skill and emotional depth that came from decades of dedication to her craft. But it was when Nicholas joined her at the piano for a duet, something Olivia hadn't expected, that the evening became truly special. Watching Nicholas play beside his old friend, Olivia saw him in a completely different light. This wasn't the controlled businessman or the guarded romantic partner. This was Nicholas as he had been meant to be. Passionate, artistic, fully alive, in a way that had nothing to do with profit margins or board meetings. The piece they played together was complex and beautiful, requiring perfect coordination and trust. Olivia could see years of friendship and shared dreams in the way they moved together, the way they anticipated each other's musical choices. It was a conversation in melody, 20 years of separation dissolved in harmonious sound. When the music ended, there were tears in Elena's eyes, and something like wonder in Nicholas's. "I'd forgotten," he said quietly. "Forgotten what?" Elena asked. "How it felt to create something beautiful instead of just acquiring it." Elena reached over and squeezed his hand. "It's still there, Nicholas. All of it. You just buried it under so much responsibility and fear that you forgot where to find it." Later, after Elena had left with promises to stay in touch, and plans for Nicholas to attend her next performance at Carnegie Hall, Olivia found him on the penthouse's rooftop garden. The city sprawled below them, lights twinkling like earthbound stars, and Nicholas was sitting on a bench, staring out at the skyline with an expression she couldn't read. "That was beautiful," Olivia said, settling beside him on the bench. "I haven't played with another person in 15 years. Why not?" Nicholas was quiet for so long that Olivia thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because it requires trust and vulnerability, and accepting that you can't control how the other person will interpret the music." He turned to look at her. "It requires letting someone see who you really are underneath all the performance." Olivia felt her breath catch at the metaphor. "And that's scary. Terrifying." Nicholas agreed. "Because once someone sees who you really are, they have the power to destroy you, or they have the power to love you." His laugh was bitter. "In my experience, those two things often go hand in hand." Olivia studied his profile in the moonlight, this brilliant, damaged man who'd learned too young that love was dangerous and vulnerability was a luxury he couldn't afford. "What if they don't have to?" she asked softly. "What do you mean? What if loving someone doesn't give them the power to destroy you? What if it gives you the power to become more than you ever imagined you could be?" Nicholas turned to face her fully, his green eyes searching her face. "Is that what you think love is?" "I think love is choosing to trust someone with your heart. Even when you're terrified they'll break it. I think it's deciding that the possibility of incredible happiness is worth the risk of incredible pain." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes as she thought of their contract, their countdown, the careful distance Nicholas maintained even in moments like this. "And if they do break it, then at least you know you were brave enough to try." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Olivia wanted to tell him that she loved him, that she'd been falling for him since that first night at the plaza when he'd rescued her from Evelyn Harrington's matchmaking. She wanted to tell him that their fake marriage had become the realest thing in her life, that the thought of walking away in 20 days was breaking her heart. Instead, she said, "Elena was right. You know about you looking tired. I've been working too much. That's not the kind of tired I mean, and you know it." Nicholas sighed. "What do you want me to say, Olivia?" "I want you to say what you're actually feeling, instead of hiding behind business speak and emotional walls." "What I'm feeling." Nicholas stood up and began pacing the small garden space. "I'm feeling like I made a mistake. I'm feeling like this arrangement was supposed to be simple, and instead, it's become the most complicated thing I've ever done. I'm feeling like every day I spend with you makes it harder to remember why I thought keeping my distance was a good idea." Olivia's heart raced at his admission. "Nicholas, I'm feeling like I'm falling in love with you," he continued, the words raw and honest, "and it terrifies me because I don't know how to do that without losing myself completely." The confession hung in the night air like a challenge. Olivia stood and moved toward him, but Nicholas held up a hand to stop her. "Don't," he said quietly. "Don't make this harder than it already is." "Harder?" Olivia's voice cracked. "Nicholas, you just told me you're falling in love with me. How is that making anything harder? Because our contract expires in 20 days. Olivia, because this was always supposed to be temporary. Because I don't know how to be the man who deserves someone like you. Who says you have to deserve me? Who says this has to end just because some arbitrary contract says it does? It's not arbitrary. It's protection for both of us. Protection from what? From being happy? From having something real? Protection from the inevitable disappointment when reality doesn't live up to the fantasy." Olivia stared at him, finally understanding the depth of his fear. This wasn't just about Catherine or his parents, or business partnerships gone wrong. This was about a fundamental belief that happiness was temporary, that love was a luxury he couldn't afford, that caring about someone meant giving them the power to leave. "What if it's not a fantasy?" she asked softly. "What if what we have is real and messy and complicated and absolutely worth fighting for?" Nicholas's expression crumpled for just a moment, showing her a glimpse of the man underneath all the armor. "What if it's not? What if I'm not?" Olivia's heart broke for him then, for the scared 20-year-old who'd lost his parents and his dreams in one terrible year, for the successful businessman who'd convinced himself that control was more important than connection, for the man standing in front of her who was so afraid of being hurt that he was willing to hurt himself first. "Then we figure it out together," she said simply. "That's what people who love each other do, Nicholas. They figure it out together." For a moment, Olivia thought he might step toward her, might close the distance between them and choose love over fear. Instead, he took a step back. "I can't," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, Olivia. I can't." Olivia felt something shatter inside her chest, but she kept her voice steady. Can't or won't. Does it matter? It matters to me. Nicholas looked at her for a long moment, his green eyes full of regret and longing, and something that might have been goodbye. Good night, Olivia. This isn't over, Nicholas. Yes, he said softly. It is. Olivia watched him walk away, leaving her alone on the rooftop with the city lights and the remains of her heart. But as she stood there in the cool October air, she realized something important. Nicholas had just told her he was falling in love with her. He was scared. He was running. But he'd admitted the truth. And Olivia Harper hadn't spent her career studying art restoration without learning something about patience, persistence, and the delicate work of repairing things that seemed broken beyond hope. 20 days left on their contract. 20 days to convince the most stubborn man in Manhattan that some things were worth fighting for. Olivia looked out over the city that had become her home at the lights of millions of people living their own complicated love stories, and made a decision. She wasn't giving up on Nicholas Grant. Not yet. After all, the best art was often created from the most broken materials. You just had to know how to put the pieces back together. 3 weeks later, Olivia stood in her old studio apartment in Greenwich Village, surrounded by boxes and trying to figure out how her life had become so complicated. The 6-month contract had expired 2 days ago, and true to his word, Nicholas had honored every detail of their agreement. The divorce papers were filed. The Olivia Harper Contemporary Art Fund was officially established with her as the permanent director, and she was financially secure enough to afford a much nicer apartment than this tiny studio, but she'd kept the lease on her old place. And now she understood why. She'd needed somewhere to come that felt like home, somewhere that wasn't filled with memories of morning coffee with Nicholas, of piano music in the dark, of moments when she'd thought they were building something real together. Her phone buzzed with yet another text from her mother, asking how she was adjusting to single life. Claire Harper had been devastated by the divorce announcement, unable to understand how a couple who seemed so perfect together could have irreconcilable differences after only 6 months. Olivia had let everyone believe it was amicable, that she and Nicholas had simply realized they wanted different things. It was easier than explaining that she'd fallen in love with a man who was too afraid of getting hurt to let himself be happy. A knock on her door interrupted her brooding. Olivia opened it to find Mrs. Liu standing in the hallway holding a covered dish and wearing an expression that suggested she was prepared for battle. Mrs. Liu, how did you know I was here? Nicholas told me. Mrs. Liu pushed past Olivia into the tiny apartment, setting the dish down on the counter. He also told me you wouldn't be coming back to the penthouse. The contract expired. We agreed it was time to move on. The contract was nonsense, and we both know it. Mrs. Liu fixed Olivia with a stern look. That boy has been miserable for 3 weeks. Won't eat, won't sleep, snaps at everyone who tries to talk to him. Yesterday I caught him playing that sad piano music at 3 in the morning. Olivia's heart clenched at the image. Mrs. Liu, I can't force him to want something he's determined to avoid. You can fight for him. I tried fighting for him. He made it clear he doesn't want to be fought for. Mrs. Liu was quiet for a moment, studying Olivia's face. Did he tell you about his parents? He said they died in a car accident when he was 16. Did he tell you what happened the night before they died? Olivia shook her head. Mrs. Liu settled into Olivia's single chair with the air of someone preparing to tell a long story. Nicholas had been accepted to several prestigious music programs. Juilliard, Curtis, New England Conservatory. He wanted to pursue music professionally, maybe become a concert pianist. His parents thought it was foolish, said he needed to focus on business training so he could take over the company eventually. Olivia sat down on her bed, giving Mrs. Liu her full attention. The night before the accident, Nicholas had a huge fight with his father. He told his parents he was 18, he could make his own decisions, and he was going to Juilliard with or without their support. His father said if Nicholas chose music over family responsibility, he shouldn't bother coming home again. Olivia felt her stomach drop. Oh no. Nicholas stormed out, spent the night at a friend's house, planning to prove to his parents that he could succeed as a musician. Mrs. Liu's voice grew soft. They died the next morning on their way to a business meeting. Nicholas never got to apologize, never got to make things right. He spent 20 years believing that if he hadn't been so selfish, if he'd just accepted his responsibilities instead of chasing dreams, maybe they wouldn't have been in that car. That's not his fault. No, it's not. But guilt doesn't listen to logic. Nicholas has spent his entire adult life trying to atone for that fight, trying to be the son his father wanted instead of the man he was meant to be. He's convinced himself that wanting things for himself, happiness, love, a life outside of work is selfish and dangerous. How do I help him see that it's not? Mrs. Liu smiled for the first time since arriving, by being patient and by reminding him that some things are worth the risk. After Mrs. Lodi, Liu left. Olivia sat in her tiny apartment and thought about everything she'd learned. Nicholas wasn't just afraid of love, he was afraid of wanting anything for himself. He'd spent so many years being the responsible one, the one who sacrificed his dreams for duty, that he'd forgotten how to believe he deserved happiness. Olivia picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Elena Moreau's number. "Elena, it's Olivia Grant. Well, Olivia Harper again. I need a favor." 1 week later, Nicholas sat in his office on a rainy Thursday afternoon, staring at quarterly reports, and trying to convince himself that the hollow feeling in his chest was just stress. The penthouse felt too big without Olivia's laugh echoing through it. Morning coffee tasted terrible without her terrible puns to go with it, and he'd stopped playing piano altogether because every melody reminded him of her. Margaret Liu knocked on his office door, interrupting his brooding. "Nicholas, there's someone here to see you. If it's another reporter asking about the divorce, it's Elena Moreau." Nicholas looked up in surprise. He hadn't spoken to Elena since the night of her performance, though they'd exchanged a few texts about her upcoming Carnegie Hall concert. "Send her in." Elena entered his office with the same vibrant energy she'd brought to his penthouse, but her expression was serious. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "Elena, if this is about the Carnegie Hall performance, I'm not sure I'm in the right headspace. It isn't about my performance. This is about yours." Nicholas frowned. "I don't know what you mean." Elena settled into the chair across from his desk and fixed him with a look that reminded him of his old piano teacher, kind but uncompromising. 20 years ago, you gave up music because you thought you had to choose between your dreams and your family responsibilities. Now you're giving up love for the same reason." Nicholas felt his defenses rise. "My personal life isn't. Your personal life is the saddest performance I've ever witnessed. And that's coming from someone who's seen a lot of tragic interpretations of Chopin." Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "Nicholas, what are you so afraid of?" "I'm not afraid of anything." "Liar." Elena leaned forward. "You're terrified of the same thing you were terrified of at 18, of wanting something so much that losing it would destroy you." Nicholas was quiet for a long moment. What if it does? What if it doesn't? What if the thing you're most afraid of losing is actually the thing that could save you? "Elena, Olivia called me." Nicholas's heart stopped. "What?" "She told me about your arrangement, about the contract, about how you convinced yourself that what you felt for each other wasn't real." Elena smiled. "That woman loves you, Nicholas. Really, truly loves you. Not your money, not your success, not the image you project to the world. She loves the man who plays melancholy piano in the dark, who worries about environmental impact studies, and who buys art funds for museum curators who make terrible coffee puns." Nicholas felt something crack inside his chest. "It doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters." Elena stood up. "The contract expired. We agreed. The contract was a safety net you built because you were too scared to admit you were falling in love." Elena headed toward the door, then paused. "But here's the thing about safety nets. My friend, sometimes they keep you from learning how to fly. By the way," she added, "I'm performing at Carnegie Hall next Friday. Olivia will be there. She's helping sponsor the event through her new art fund. You should come." "Elena, not for me, not for the music. For yourself. For the man you used to be before you decided that wanting things was dangerous." Elena's smile was sad but hopeful. "He's still in there, Nicholas. You just have to be brave enough to let him out." After Elena left, Nicholas sat alone in his office as rain streaked down the windows. He thought about Olivia's smile over morning coffee, about the way she'd looked at him when he played piano, about the night on the rooftop when she'd told him love was choosing to trust someone with your heart, even when you were terrified. He thought about his parents, about the fight that had haunted him for 20 years, about the choices he'd made out of guilt and fear instead of love and hope. He thought about the 6 months he'd spent pretending to be married to Olivia Harper, and how those had been the happiest 6 months of his adult life. Nicholas picked up his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he was looking for. "Rivera, this is Nicholas Grant. I'd like to schedule an appointment. It's time I dealt with some things I've been avoiding for too long. Carnegie Hall." 1 week later, Olivia sat in the front row of Carnegie Hall, wearing the midnight blue Valentino gown from their first public appearance, and trying not to scan the audience for Nicholas's familiar face. Elena had assured her he would be there, but Olivia was trying not to get her hopes up. The past month had been a whirlwind of establishing the new art fund, moving into a beautiful apartment on the Upper West Side, and learning how to navigate New York society as a divorced woman instead of a billionaire's wife. She was doing well professionally, better than well, actually. The art fund was already generating buzz in museum circles, and she'd been approached about several exciting collaboration opportunities, but personally, she missed Nicholas so much it felt like a physical ache. She missed his dry humor, his unexpected kindness, the way he looked at her like she was something precious and rare. She missed the potential they'd had, the future they might have built, if he'd been brave enough to take the risk. The lights dimmed, and Elena appeared on stage in an elegant black gown. She sat at the grand piano and began to play, and Olivia was immediately transported by the beauty of the music. Elena had chosen a program of romantic pieces: Chopin's Ballade, No. 1, Debussy's Clair de Lune, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto, No. Each piece was more beautiful than the last, played with the kind of emotional depth that came from understanding that music was a language of the heart. It was during the intermission that Olivia finally saw him. Nicholas was standing in the back of the hall, looking devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo, but somehow different, softer, maybe less guarded. Their eyes met across the crowded lobby, and Olivia felt her heart skip several beats. He was walking toward her. Weaving through the chattering crowd with determined purpose, Olivia stood frozen, unsure whether to run toward him or away from him. "Olivia," Nicholas said when he reached her, his voice rough with emotion. "Nicholas." Olivia's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Elena can be very persuasive. Nicholas's smile was tentative, uncertain. "You look beautiful." "Thank you." They stood there for a moment, the sounds of intermission conversation flowing around them, both seeming unsure how to bridge the distance that had grown between them. "How are you?" Nicholas asked finally. "Good. Busy. The art fund is keeping me on my toes." Olivia tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous gesture Nicholas recognized. "How are you?" "Miserable," Nicholas said honestly. "Absolutely miserable." Olivia's breath caught at his blunt admission. "Nicholas, I've been seeing a therapist," he continued, the words coming out in a rush, "dealing with some things I should have dealt with 20 years ago, trying to figure out why I'm so afraid of wanting things that might make me happy." "And what did you figure out?" Nicholas looked at her with those green eyes that had haunted her dreams for weeks. "That I've been so afraid of losing the people I love, that I've been pushing them away before they could leave on their own." He took a small step closer. "And that the 6 months I spent married to you were the best 6 months of my life, even if they started as a lie." "Nicholas, and that I'm tired of being afraid." "What are you saying?" Nicholas took her hands in his, the same gesture they'd practiced for their first public appearance, but infinitely more real now. "I'm saying I love you, Olivia Harper. I love your terrible coffee puns and your passion for art and the way you see the best in people even when they can't see it in themselves. I love that you bought me a piano performance because you thought I needed to reconnect with an old friend. I love that you fight for things you believe in, even when one of those things is me." Olivia felt tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm saying that I know our contract expired, and I know we agreed to a clean break, but I'm hoping you might be willing to negotiate new terms." Olivia laughed through her tears. "What kind of terms?" Nicholas dropped to one knee right there in the Carnegie Hall lobby, pulling a ring box from his pocket as conversation stopped, and people began to stare. "The kind where this time it's real. The kind where we promise to love each other for better or worse, in sickness and in health, for as long as we both shall live." He opened the box to reveal a stunning vintage ring, an Art Deco design with a centered diamond, surrounded by smaller stones that caught the lobby lights like stars. "Olivia Harper, will you marry me for real this time?" Olivia stared at the ring, at Nicholas's hopeful face, at the crowd of strangers who had stopped to watch this unexpected romantic drama unfold. She thought about their contract, about the careful walls they'd built around their hearts, about the 6 months they'd spent pretending to love each other while actually falling in love for real. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder. "Yes. Absolutely. Yes." Nicholas slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood and kissed her as the Carnegie Hall lobby erupted in applause. It was their first real kiss. No cameras, no contracts, no pretense. Just love, finally acknowledged and freely given. When they broke apart, Olivia was crying and laughing at the same time. "I love you too," she said against his lips. "I love you so much it scared me." "We'll figure it out together," Nicholas said, echoing her words from that night on the rooftop. "That's what people who love each other do, right?" "Right." The second half of Elena's concert was a blur of beautiful music and stolen glances between Olivia and Nicholas. They sat holding hands like teenagers, occasionally whispering to each other and earning disapproving looks from other audience members. When Elena finished her final piece, a hauntingly beautiful interpretation of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the audience rose in thunderous applause. Elena found Olivia and Nicholas in the crowd afterward and smiled, her eyes twinkling with satisfaction. Later, at the after-party in the green room, Elena pulled them both aside. "So," she said with obvious delight, "I see my matchmaking worked." "Matchmaking?" Olivia looked confused. "Did you think it was a coincidence that I chose a program of all romantic pieces? Or that I made sure to mention how perfect you two were together during my interview with the Times this morning?" Nicholas laughed. "You've been planning this. I've been hoping for this." Elena's expression grew serious. "You two are meant for each other. Anyone with eyes could see it that night at your penthouse. You just needed time to stop being afraid and start being brave." "Thank you," Olivia said softly, "for everything." "Thank me by being happy," Elena replied, "and by inviting me to the real wedding." 6 months later, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Olivia stood in the Temple of Dendur, surrounded by 200 of their closest friends and family, wearing a dress that made her feel like a princess, and watching Nicholas wait for her at an altar decorated with white roses and baby's breath. This time, there were no contracts, no time limits, no careful arrangements. This time it was just love, messy and complicated, and absolutely worth fighting for. As Olivia walked down the aisle to the man who'd learned to choose love over fear, she caught sight of familiar faces in the crowd, her parents beaming with pride, Mrs. Lou dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, Elena, who had agreed to play during the ceremony, even Evelyn Harrington, who had somehow convinced herself that she was responsible for bringing them together in the first place. Nicholas's eyes never left Olivia's face as she approached. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You look incredible. You clean up pretty well yourself, Mr. Grant." The ceremony was everything their first fake wedding hadn't been. Genuine, emotional, and filled with promises they both intended to keep. When the officiant asked if they would love, honor, and cherish each other for the rest of their lives, Nicholas's "I do" was strong and certain, and Olivia's was filled with joy. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant announced, and Nicholas cupped Olivia's face in his hands with infinite tenderness. "Mrs. Grant," he whispered against her lips. "For real this time. For real this time." Olivia agreed and kissed her husband as their friends and family erupted in celebration. The reception was held in the museum's Great Hall, with Elena providing a soundtrack of romantic classics, while guests danced under the soaring arches. Olivia and Nicholas's first dance was to a piece Elena had composed, especially for them, something beautiful and hopeful that spoke of second chances and happy endings. "Any regrets?" Nicholas asked as they swayed together. "Just one," Olivia said, smiling up at him. Nicholas's face fell slightly. "What?" "I regret that it took us so long to figure this out. We could have been having real wedding cake instead of that tiny piece we shared at the plaza 6 months ago." Nicholas's laugh was rich and joyful. "The cake was terrible anyway. The company was pretty good, though." "The company," Nicholas said, spinning Olivia in a gentle circle, "was perfect." As the evening wound down, Olivia found herself standing with Nicholas on the museum's front steps, looking out at the city that had brought them together. The art fund had exceeded all expectations in its first year. Nicholas had started taking piano lessons again, and they'd both learned that the best partnerships were the ones where you chose each other every single day. "So," Nicholas said, pulling Olivia close against his side, "what do you think? Ready for the real adventure to begin?" Olivia looked up at her husband, her real husband, who'd learned to trust his heart instead of just his head, and smiled. "With you, I'm ready for anything." "Good," Nicholas said, "because I have a confession to make." "Oh no, what now?" "I may have bought us a house in Tuscany for our honeymoon, and possibly for every anniversary after that." Olivia laughed, the sound echoing off the museum's stone facade. "Nicholas Grant, you are absolutely impossible, but you love me anyway." "But I love you anyway." Olivia agreed and kissed him under the New York stars. Later, much later, when they were home in their penthouse that now felt like a real home instead of just an expensive hotel, Nicholas played piano while Olivia curled up on the couch with a book about Renaissance art. The music was happy this time, full of hope and promise, and the kind of joy that came from knowing you'd found exactly where you belonged. "Play the piece Elena wrote for our wedding," Olivia called out again. "I just played it 20 minutes ago. I like it. It's our song now." Nicholas began the familiar melody, and Olivia set down her book to watch him play. This was her favorite time of day, when the business world was shut out, and it was just the two of them creating their own little corner of happiness in a city of 8 million people. "Olivia, Nicholas called without stopping his playing. Yeah? Thank you. For what? For seeing who I could be before I could see it myself. For fighting for us when I was too scared to fight for myself. For making me believe that some risks are worth taking. Olivia got up from the couch and went to sit beside Nicholas on the piano bench, resting her head on his shoulder as his hands moved across the keys. Thank you for teaching me that the best love stories aren't the easy ones, she said softly. They're the ones where you choose each other every day. Even when it's scary, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, Nicholas agreed. As the last notes of their song faded into the night, Olivia thought about how their story had started with a lie at a charity gala and a fake marriage contract. Now here they were, a year and a half later, more in love than ever and building a real life together. Sometimes, the best things really did come from the most unexpected beginnings. You just had to be brave enough to see where they could lead. I love you, Nicholas Grant, Olivia whispered into the quiet of their home. I love you too, Olivia Grant, Nicholas replied, and played their song one more time as the city hummed around them and their real happily ever after finally began. Epilogue. 5 years later, the sound of children's laughter echoed through the penthouse as 3-year-old Sophia Grant, named after the woman who'd helped bring her parents together, chased their golden retriever around the living room while 2-year-old Benjamin Grant attempted to play piano with his father. No, Benny, Nicholas said patiently. Gentle touche. The piano is an instrument, not a jungle gym. Olivia watched from the doorway, her hand resting on her rounded belly where baby number 3 was due to arrive in just 2 months. The Olivia Harper Contemporary Art Fund had grown into one of the most respected acquisition programs in the country. Nicholas had started a music education foundation for underprivileged children, and their marriage had only gotten stronger with each passing year. How's the empire of tiny humans? Olivia asked, settling carefully onto the couch. Chaotic, loud, perfect, Nicholas said, scooping Benny onto his lap. Sophia, come say hello to mommy before nap time. Their daughter bounded over all dark curls and green eyes identical to her father's. Mommy, baby sister moving. Olivia took Sophia's small hand and placed it on her belly. Feel that? That's your baby sister saying hello. She's dancing. Sophia giggled. Just like her big sister, Nicholas said, joining them on the couch with Benny, who had fallen asleep against his father's chest. Mrs. Lou says dinner will be ready in an hour, Olivia said. She's making your favorite, that chicken thing with the complicated sauce. She's been spoiling us since the kids were born. She's been spoiling us since the day we met her, Olivia corrected. Remember when she told me I was too skinny? You were too skinny. You still don't eat enough vegetables. I'm growing a human being, Nicholas. I think I get a pass on vegetables. Nicholas leaned over and kissed her temple. You get a pass on everything. You're perfect. Even when I'm enormous and grumpy and can't see my own feet, especially then. Little Sophia had climbed onto the couch between them and was now fast asleep against Olivia's side. Benny was snoring softly in Nicholas's arms. Outside, the city hummed with its usual energy, but inside their home, everything was peaceful and exactly as it should be. Any regrets? Olivia asked quietly, echoing Nicholas's question from their wedding night 5 years ago. Nicholas looked around at their life, the toys scattered across expensive Persian rugs, the finger paintings stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, the beautiful chaos of a house filled with love and laughter, and the occasional toddler meltdown. Not a single one, he said softly. You? Olivia looked at her husband, at their sleeping children, at the home they'd built together from a foundation of fake marriage contracts and real feelings they'd been too scared to admit. Not one, she whispered. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And as the sun set over Manhattan, painting their penthouse in golden light, the Grant family settled in for another ordinary, extraordinary evening of the life they'd built together, one honest conversation, one brave choice, one coffee pun at a time. Some love stories, Olivia thought, as she drifted off to sleep surrounded by her family, really do have the perfect ending.